Good evening. I welcome you all on behalf of Society for Empowerment. Today we have webinar on Buddha, Gandhi and mental health, and it is the third program in this series. At first I'd like to welcome our chairman, Professor S. Narayan sir, to give his presidential welcome address. Narayan sir.
Namaste, welcome to you all, especially to Dr. Jyoti Vedji, Dr. S.V. Raju, Dr. Pereira, and Deep Shikha. She is representing the district magistrate of Motihari, where Gandhiji did experiment for truth. So, because the district magistrate is badly engaged in COVID-19 activities, so he deputed Deepshika ji. So we welcome her also. And one more person, Dr. Ashutosh Sharan, is yet to join. He is also a medical practitioner in Motihari, a well-known name for Motihari, Dr. Ashutosh Sharan. He will be joining us maybe in few minutes or so. And Dr. Arun Gandhi is busy with the racial conflict in USA. So he will be available. He will join us maybe around 7:30 or so. By that time, he will be free. He is in the meeting. So he conveyed to me. Today's topic is that of Gandhi, Buddha, Gandhi, and mental health. Mental health is very, very important subject for COVID-19 because most of the people living under this lockdown, they have all kind of mental uh, thinking. They don't have any outlet for their expression is very, very limited. So the mental health is very important for a subject like COVID-19. Now our patron Dr. A.K. Pandey has also joined, so I welcome him on behalf of the society. And so today's discussion is based on mental health of the people during COVID, which is Buddha in his own time has talked about the mental health. And Gandhiji also worked in the same region, that is Motihari, and Buddha also has lived for some time in Motihari. There is a one place close to Motihari where Buddha spent his time, and even today the monument is there, the of Buddha there. And this Gandhiji also went to that place. So that's why I thought that let us discuss how we have, uh, how much Gandhiji was influenced by the Buddhist thought, and how he experimented that in his experiment with truth. Today is the 25th April. It is a very important day for Motihari and for this webinar for Gandhiji because on 25th his first uh, started taking the complaint of the farmers, the indigo farmers. The indigo farmers has a lot of complaint against the uh, indigo British owners. So today he started from a place that is close to this Motihari. That is, Gandhiji went to Shivrajpur in Lokaria, and registered the statement of farmers. And in the today in the evening itself, he left for the Bettiah. And when he reached Bettiah on foot, he had a swelling in his foot. So this was and there when he reached Mutihari, the huge crowd of the farmers were there. So he has to call some more persons to uh, take the note down the statements of the farmers. So this is a very important day for the Gandhi, and then for Buddha this 25th is for Buddhism is equally important because Lord Buddha got enlightenment, but in the process, the 25th of this April today is being celebrated as the Buddha birthday in Colombia, in Cambodia, in Cambodia. So we it's the date was chosen considering these two importance of the Mutihari, and I requested the district magistrate to also to come and say something because he is to me so far I know he is a man of academic interest. Our our patron, Dr. A.K. Pandey, though he is an IS, but he is deeply involved in the academic activities. So the present district magistrate of Motihari is equally important, and I hope that Deepsika, the senior deputy collector of Motihari, is equally interested in academic activities. So she will formally welcome all the participants on behalf of the district magistrate of Motihari and on her personal behalf. So I will request her to welcome the participants and say a few words about the Mutihari and Gandhiji and the mental health, what kind of mental health right now the people of Mutihari is having, all that. Whatsoever you want to speak, you are free, you are welcome to.
Yeah, welcome, Deepsika ji.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Ashish. Hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are
Yes,
audible.
you are not.
Okay. Good evening to one and all. Firstly, as Professor S. Narayan has clearly told that district magistrate wasn't available because of the COVID situation and the epidemic because of it, and so I am representing him. So on his behalf, firstly, I would like to welcome you all here. Since it's COVID days and we are connected here digitally, and I would also wish and hope that someday there can be some this kind of program physically where I would love to welcome you all on the soil of Motihari. And on if we talk about this topic, so having served Motihari for last 2 years and being in very close in touch with Motihari, I can clearly tell you that when you come to Motihari, you realize that Gandhi is still alive in Motihari. We realize that people remember him, people remember his words, but however, uh, his talks on the mental health is not very clearly amplified, and people are not much aware of it. What I have read about Gandhiji is he was the person who wanted to live till 105 years. However, when the riot occurred of 1946 and 47, he did not have any interest in his life and he wanted to die as a normal person. So he was also a person who went through a depression. However, he fought with it. And so I hope that webinar will be very fruitful on talking about the topic of mental health and how uh, we can um, we can learn from the lives of Buddha and Gandhiji. So with these words, I would like to again welcome all the noted speakers here and the speaker who have not arrived yet. And I again wish that there can be some program on the soil of Motihari where district magistrate and including myself will welcome you again. Thank you a lot. And if you don't mind, sir, I would like to take a leave as I would also have to rush for the COVID work.
Okay, thank you. You can.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much, Deepsika ji. Thank you. In continuance of this program, now I will request Dr. Jyoti Vedji to give her presentation. No, I will be sharing the presentation and she will be deliberating it. I have got her presentation, I will be sharing it.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yeah, ma'am,
Yes.
you are audible.
Am I audible clearly to everybody?
Yes, ma'am, you
Yes.
are audible.
Okay. At the outset, I would like to really thank Professor Narayan for giving me this opportunity to present a totally different scenario of COVID situation in relationship to doctors. This time is very, very worrisome. The mental health of doctors and healthcare workers is at stake. I wonder if any of you has been a frontline worker for COVID situation. It was 23rd March 2020 when Indore got its first case positive COVID. I was at that time Dean of MJ Medical College Indore, and we were leading the COVID. We were supposed to be the managers for COVID situation. At that time, we just had 70 beds in the hospital reserved for COVID patients, and our lab was doing only 40 tests. From that moment, I don't think for the next 8 months when I was in office, I ever slept more than 4 to 5 hours in the night. We ramped up our laboratory to perform from 40 to 2,500 cases in a day, tests in a day. We ramped up our bed strength from 70 to straight 1,300 beds with 250 ICU beds, with 750 high dependency units, and so on and so forth. Indore Medical College was the forefront leader for COVID management, and as the person at the helm of affairs, I have actually gone through the entire situation personally. I would uh, take uh, a few minutes of your time to talk about the current situation of this pandemic in India. Can I have the next slide, Ashish? Can we go back? Yeah, yeah. Next, please. Next. So on 11th of March, no, can we go back? Can, on 11th of March, the WHO formally declared that SARS-CoV-2 is a pandemic. Now you know that India has a combination of private as well as government healthcare facilities, but at that time, because of the fear, many of the private hospitals just closed their doors to those patients who were COVID positive. Next. Because of this, the general public went into a phase of irritation, restlessness, and even despair. And whom to show their despair to? The authorities were at the back gate. So the person in the forefront was the doctor, the healthcare workers, who was verbally, physically, mentally abused by people because people had no outlet except the doctors. Next, please. Today, we have been going through this pandemic for more than a year. Now, can anybody imagine? Can any of you imagine how it is to wear a PPE kit? You literally can't breathe. We give duties at a stretch for 6 to 8 hours in that PPE kit inside COVID positive wards because these are the patients who do not have their attendants with them. So we are actually the unexpected targets against all these irritating factors. The patients are very, very upset. It's a global health crisis. Here we are trying to save the individuals with whatever very limited resources we have. Next, please. And the doctors are just at the forefront of getting all the possible abuses. Next. I'm just going to quote a couple of incidences. On 8th April, two trainee doctors in New Delhi were assaulted by a neighbor because he said, "You're coming back from the hospital, so I'm not going to permit you to enter my building." With me, it happened in Indore. My junior residents were thrown out from their paying guest accommodations, and then overnight I went to authorities. We hired hotels for them, we hired guest houses for them, and we gave them places to stay. They were literally, the doors were shut in their faces. Next. All the streets, they didn't want the doctors. On 19th April last year, a neurosurgeon was not permitted to be buried in Chennai because they thought that his body will spread the infection. Next. In Indore, this picture went viral very much. All the people who went to do the swab, to do the containment, to do the contact tracing, stones were hurled at them. And you can see in the picture the doctor is trying to run and save her life. This was a female doctor from the medical profession. Next. So these are some of the challenges which are faced by the doctors. Next. Now these assaults, they are verbal abuses, verbal threats, sometimes aggressive gestures, but also manhandling. Even a doctor has been literally murdered by stone pelting by the public. Next. Now we all know that our government hospitals are do not have enough facilities or equipment or infrastructure which is needed. Government has been trying to ramp up, but it's been a very almost a lost battle. Next. Now private hospitals close their non-emergency admissions. Now where to go? The people who are non-COVID, where do they go? Government facilities have been converted into COVID facilities. Private hospitals are not opening their doors. So the patients are coming through a very big crisis. Next. So what are we? The doctors have literally become the new untouchables. We always think of wish Gandhiji was here for helping us. This is literally what I think because we have become the new untouchables. People are panicked that this doctor is going to become contagious and give me this infection because this doctor is coming from COVID ward. Next. Now, lot of wrong news has been spread by social media, by media, that COVID virus, how it can spread, how can it affect individuals. People do not realize that if you're wearing a mask, if you are keeping a distance, and if you are washing your hands again and again, you can be safe from COVID virus. They think that anybody who's been in touch with a COVID positive patient, even if he was wearing a PPE kit, is a contagious element. Next. No, I think Ashish, you've gone back many slides. So how to combat this? I think one very big point, which is a negative aspect of our doctors, is that we fail to communicate. This patient who's lying inside the ward, his attendants are outside and they want to know what the condition of their patient. I started this new trend of giving tablets and mobile phones to my doctors and healthcare workers so that you can see in the picture on the left, these patients were asked to communicate with the relatives outside. And this was one of the biggest way to avoid violence and untoward incidences. Ashish, I don't know where. Yeah. Next, please. And I think the role of social media, the role of media is very important, and only they can play a positive role. They can collaborate with the government agency and they can provide an effective information campaign so that they can educate the public about how the disease is spread, how can it be contained, what are the preventive measures. Next, please. So this social media can help in awareness, it can help in networking, it can help in sharing of information. Of course, it can provide an entertainment, but it can also discard the fake news about COVID. And that's where it's very, very important that we have a positive platform. Of course, now the doctors have also started in the self-defense mode, and they're actually evaluating patients from a distance sometimes because they don't want to have that assault. And so the actual patient care is hampered. Next. Some doctors have placed marshals in front of their hospitals. All India Institute has actually started self-defense classes for doctors. Because what to do? You are at the front line, a patient is brought almost dead. The relatives blame the doctors because doctor is the easiest target. So this is the doctors have to survive. This is what they've started doing. Next. Recently, of course, there's been an ordinance issued, but actually, when it's a mob violence, nobody cares. So this is a non-bailable offense, but that all these procedures, FIRs, court, will come later. By then, the doctor would be physically injured. So it's a very grave situation for doctors, and it is actually hampering their mental health. Doctors are feeling like they've been closed inside a closed room from all sides. No help from government. Very, very bad reactions from the patients who are seriously brought, and literally no help from their own authorities. Next. Of course, now a lot of doctors who are not posted in the COVID ward have started giving medicine advice. They're doing virtual consultations, and so they're not coming face to face with the patients. Next. Of course, as always, role of education goes a long way because we need to educate the masses, and also we need to improve our primary healthcare system. We have to improve, strengthen the public health education and public health practice. We really need that these doctors are human beings. They have their limitations. You know what's happening these days? What I'm seeing, patient gets a fever. He says, "Oh, it may be just an ordinary fever, paracetamol le lete hain." He waits for 5 to 7 days. By then, the new strain of virus has already infected 70% of his lungs. Then he comes breathless to the hospital. Now, hospital has no oxygen. Hospital does not have a single ventilator bed free. The patient may have to wait in the ambulance or may have to wait at the casualty. Patient may succumb to that. He dies. The doctor gets the blame. So definitely what we need is that we as doctors need to be supported in our fight against this global health crisis. Next. So finally, what I need to speak about today is that COVID health crisis has really exacerbated the violence against doctors, healthcare workers, and we have become the unforeseen target in this fight. And if we want that there is a sustainable protection for these healthcare workers, the ordinance which government had passed needs to be extended. It needs to be incorporated into existing laws, and we need to have a strict enforcement of that. Doctors need protection if the public wants them to care for the patients. Thanks a lot. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer anything related to
Thank you
treatment
very
of
much, ma'am.
COVID. vaccination. If anybody has any query.
If any of the participants or speakers have any question for ma'am, they can ask. Mm. I think as ma'am has very clearly and in very good manner presented her entire thing, so we don't have too many questions. Now I will like to welcome Dr. MSVK Raju, sir, for his deliberation. Sir, kindly unmute yourself. Sir, yeah,
Am I audible?
yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah. Huh?
Sir, do you have any presentation?
Yeah,
So there is a share button there on the
yeah,
screen. Yeah, kindly
share
share this.
screen. I'm just doing it. Share. Yeah. Sorry for
Mm, uh, Sir, your screen is not coming. You need to select the shared button. Yeah, fine, fine, sir, fine. Kindly put it on slideshow mode. Sir, kindly put it on slideshow mode.
okay. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are
Yes,
audible.
yes.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, there is a slideshow view at the bottom. Kindly
I
make it in
press it. I
slideshow.
press it. It's okay. Can you? Can I start now?
Yes, sir, you can
Hello.
Yes.
start.
Well, good evening, Professor Narayan, and all the dignitaries on the web guys. Uh, Firstly, I am not talking about COVID. I think we're all saturated with COVID every minute and every day. Actually, we are hearing more and more these days of COVID. And I spoke to Dr. Narayan. He permitted, I thought, tribal mental health in India issues and challenges, which has been, I am involved with this for a couple of years now. So I thought I'll speak on this just as a probably it will be variety. Well, this is me on the picture. I am not a tribal by birth, but I am a tribal at heart. I come from a tribal village in Odisha. Well, I was brought up by tribal people, even
Ra-
breastfed
uh,
by tribal. Can you
Ra-
hear me? Can you hear
Raju sir,
me? Ah,
Raju sir, if you will put it on slideshow mode, then it will give a clear picture. At the bottom
okay.
there is slideshow mode. Slideshow,
So,
yeah. Just yeah, near that slideshow.
yeah. Is it okay now? No, no,
Click
stop
on it.
sharing it again.
No.
No, no,
It's
just a
got
minute.
it's got cut, sir. You need to
Yeah,
again
yeah,
say.
I'm doing it again. Share, slideshow. Ah. Is it okay now?
Okay, sir. You
Yeah,
continue. Kindly continue.
I can see. That's okay. Yeah. So I'm not a tribal. I am tribal at heart, not by birth. But I belong to a tribal village where most of the tribals are woodcutters, and I have been watching them since my childhood. And when I became a president of the Indian Psychiatric Society, I thought I will have a specialty section on tribal mental health. That's how the story started rather late in my life. But then, better late than never, I thought. Tribal people are among the world's most marginalized population groups. Their health status differs significantly from non-tribal population groups. Relatively little research has examined directly the mental health status and treatment needs of these people, not just in India, all over the world actually. The epidemiological data is absolutely scarce, more so in India, and the methodology of whatever the data is available is questionable. So we do not know whether they are valid, whatever the figures we have. Uh, That's, I'm not saying the WHO says that 98. The situation has not changed since then, actually. They're very sad. If you see that human development indices of the tribal and non-tribal people, the tribal people are come last, even and compared to their brothers in scheduled caste persons. You see, their life expectancy is less, the literacy rate is less, they are more below poverty line where in urban and rural areas, and their nutritional status, starvation 18.5, body mass index, that is that is also large percentage of people have low body mass index. And we are now in 70th year of our independence, and it is sad that a lot of progress has been made, let me say that. But in comparison to the other groups, general people and the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes still come last. That is rather saddening because for the reason they are called Adivasis. They are first to live here on this land. They are also called Girijans and Vanvasis, officially referred as scheduled tribes. In some places they are called first citizens. I think in Canada they are called. Constitute 8.6% of Indian population. Their population growth is little high in comparison to other populations. So this the 2011 census compare are available now. But right now, I think then there will be about 12 crore people, tribal people, and in India, one of the largest tribal groups anywhere in a nation in the world. We have about 700 tribes officially recognized, and they have 654 languages. Most of them do not have scripts. Spread predominantly across the Himalayan belt in the northeast, um, up to Jammu Kashmir, and also in central India, a portion of the eastern, like in Odisha, where from ICOM it is 22% of the population are tribal people. And the scheduled tribes are defined in the Constitution of India, and the safeguards are spelled out. The tribal people safeguards against encroachment. But in our country, tribals in India have not seen the uprootment and upheavals that occurred in certain parts of the world, like in Australia and USA and Canada. They were systematically exterminated in the with the so-called intention of civilizing them. Even the children were taken away from their parents to make them civilized citizens. That sort of thing has not happened in India. And the tribal people do not come under the caste system, Chaturvarnas of our country. In the epics, they were shown as interacting with higher groups, like in Ram had Sabari, and Arjun, Bhimsen had a tribal wife. In medieval India, tribal kings ruled large tracts of land in central India, say the Gonds have ruled central India, so Madhya Pradesh now, large tracts of land they own for centuries. So it is not that they were doing well in comparison to the other people across the world. But exploitation, deterioration in status occurred after the advent of the British. With the development, their habitats are being encroached for natural resources, for wood, for minerals, and so on, so on and so forth. And that is where the sad story has started. Well, Article 366 and 342 of our Constitution defines scheduled tribes. The following criteria are generally accepted since 1931, though they are not explicitly defined. They are geographically isolated. They have primitive traits. I don't know what they are actually. They are backward, they are shy of contact, and they have their own distinctive culture. Each of the tribes has their own brand of their culture and language and living modes. Culture may be defined as the lifestyle, values, and behavior and beliefs shared by a group of people or population. This is very important in the cast of tribal people when we discuss later. It is learned and transmitted down the generation, not through the books, by observation, by following the modes of living, we learn our culture. Plays an important role in how people experience distress, express their distress, seek help, cope with stress, and develop social supports. This is the scene of my village. Uh, you see that the home is written on the gada. There, more or less, the tribal people are follow the majority religion modes, but you see some of them are wearing t-shirts and shirts and all. Now you can call them Western type of dress. They are not there in the village most of the time. They go to metropolitan cities like Mumbai, Surat, Goa, Delhi, and all sorts of places. And though they live there for most of the time for earn their livelihood, when they come back to the village, they revert to their original culture. You see, that's what I thought I must show you. As I said, tribals, there are more, I think about 500 million tribals are there all over the world. The International Labour Organization Convention, that is one of the landmarks in 1989, they said adequate health service taking into consideration cultural, social, and traditional practices of the tribal people. They may not conform to your urban middle class pattern. WHO Mental Health of Indigenous People, a small booklet was published by Alex in 1999, but no information about the tribal people of India. India is a big country. And the UN Permanent Forum for Indigenous Issues, UNPFII, it formed in 2000, it reported directly to the erstwhile UNESCO. Expert mechanism on the rights of indigenous people. You see, they have systematically put up structures to see how the tribals are treated all over the world. All in 2007. There is a special rapporteur on the rights of indigenous people, and appointed one lady there, 2007. They follow how their rights are protected or not, and they go directly to the Secretary General. Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, DRIPS in 2000, landmark thing, and the Food and Agriculture Organization Policy on Indigenous and Tribal People in 2010. These are really important in globally speaking. Whereas in India, the Ministry of Tribal Affairs from the, I think, Social Empowerment Ministry, it is bifurcated in 1919. The Cabinet Minister especially deals with tribal affairs. The National Commission of Scheduled Tribes formed in 2004. There is a tribal sub-plan, a separate plan, and which center contributes a bit, states contribute a bit. And the landmark Forest Rights Act in 2006, they are given right to live in the forest, land under individual or common occupation, right to own, collect and use minor forest produce. They are not supposed to cut trees, they are not supposed to kill animals. Right for rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is there are so many dams and other projects come up, they are displaced, and they have a right for rehabilitation. I believe now there are 50 lakh people are still to be rehabilitated. National Mental Health Policy in 2014, National Tribal Health Report 2018. I do not know, I mean, I think they are meetings in 2013. I'll talk about it a little later. But again, this Tribal Health Report, mental health given hardly any space in that report. Only alcohol and substance use reported. Most of the mental illnesses, diseases of the mind are not dealt with nor mentioned at all. That shows the attitude as far as the disease of the mind concerned in the powers that be as well as the general population. A very sad story, considering the fact that about 14% of our population suffer from disease of the mind, major and minor. Again, coming to the attitude, the ICMR Bulletin on Health Status of Primitive Tribes in Odisha, no mention of mental illness at all. And burden of pattern of illness among tribals. This is a study, I think, two states, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, by the ICMR in 2015. There is no mention of disease of the mind at all. Report of the Technical Committee on Mental Health 2016. No, it is to the National Human Rights Commission report. No mention of tribals anywhere, even in the special category. National Mental Health Survey 2016, nearly 35,000 people sample size were there. We don't know how many of them are tribals. And remember, tribals consume 9% of our population. The myth is that tribals suffer from nutrition deficiency only and communicable diseases. They don't suffer from any non-communicable diseases. And diseases of the mind are non-communicable diseases. Let's not see. You see, most of the diseases are more prevalent in tribal than in general population. TB is more prominent. Diabetes mellitus only, one thing little less. Hypertension is more prominent. Cancers are more prominent. Rheumatic heart is same as general population. And what about disease of the mind? God only knows. So that is the state of affairs as far as the tribal are concerned. The questions come after seeing that how much is the mental health morbidity in the tribal population? I mean, what is the quantum of the load, illness, which we are confronted with and we have to deal with since the tribals live in remote areas? What are the mental health practices in the tribal people? How they cope up with the stresses and strains in the evolving socio-economic scenario? What are the barriers help-seeking practices? They want to go to a psychiatrist. What stops them? Or what in the mind, internally, and from outside? How psychopaths are described in the tribal population. So somebody has a delusion or a hallucination. How does he or she describes it? How you come to know there is something, this is the mind are there? What are the healing practices in the tribal people? Are there any genetic difference in drug responsivity in tribal people? Only recently, a couple of years ago, some studies are there in the dopamine this thing. In the Indian
Raju sir,
psychiatry, hello,
Raju sir, your slides are not moving.
right? You can see this? No, slides are not moving.
No, it's like tribal people. The third slide is still its third slide it's showing.
It's not. I third slide.
It it's the on a screen it is third slide only.
Okay.
The tribal people.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not computer savvy. Something is wrong there. Let's see. You can see the global landmarks now.
Mm, so it's still the third page only.
Oh my God. What do I do? What I have to do? I don't know, honestly.
You just need to click on. Yeah. Fine, sir.
You can hear
Now,
now?
yeah, it's prevailing attitudes now.
Landmarks in India, global landmarks. You can see this now?
Yes, sir. It's okay now.
Yeah. Seeing this, Indian Psychiatric Society, the center, the block in the center is me. As I said, we floated a tribal specialty mental health section in Indian Psychiatric Society, the premier mental health society of the country. And by my side is Sri Jewel Orang, the Union Cabinet Minister for Tribal Affairs, and other dignitaries on the diet. This is the first ever tribal psychiatry conference in India after independence, even before that. Then subsequently, we had a brainstorming session in Delhi where we wanted to take up stock of the prevailing situation and we wanted to give some suggestions to the government. And these are the challenges we thought. There are many, we have 16, I just condensed them to 5. There are many. One is the challenge to develop universal, targeted, and person-focused intervention. One tribe differs from the other, and tribes differ from general population. Understand local perceptions about mental health and health seeking. Even now, Sri Jewel Oran had some mental ill were killed because they thought they are influenced by devils. Now, 21st century. He comes from Odisha tribal district. Identify risk factors and assess the risk environment and government policies. Generate evidence about morbidity. We do not have anything hard data. Mind health needs and service delivery. How we are delivering service, how many psychiatrists there in tribal districts. Conduct research about health seeking, health predictors, psychopathology specific to tribal. Are there any specific culture-bound syndromes in tribal? We do not have any much information there. So we recommended some policy recommendation. There are many, and just 7 main things I am putting here to develop national level policy on mental health of tribal communities. like sub-plan we have for tribal separately. I believe this government has taken away that plan. To develop national level knowledge repertory storehouse on prevalence of diseases of the mind in tribals, to develop innovative services, to bring out an annual progress report about the state of the disease of the mind and health, to study prevalence of mind morbidity, research on different perceptions, morbidity system, how they see the symptoms, to devise new validated instruments to measure morbidity. Validated instrument, that is the keyword. You see, we are using instruments which are, as I said, most of them are Western, and most of them, if the Indians are there for the main stream population, they may not be applicable to the tribal people. Well, what we need is a culturally competent clinical assessment. You know, cultural competence means a set of, I think I learned the problem here. Competing stance, your stance, how do you approach a tribal person? With a curiosity to know and sensitive to the issues for them as in autonomous individuals. Some knowledge of cultural diversity, their culture is different from you. You cannot judge from your point of view. Cultural empathy and symbolic meaning. Example, in my village, if I suppose a knee joint is swollen, they say no power roigala, there's air has entered inside the knee. I mean, if they believe it. Now that is technically in the modern period it is illusion and serious mental illness. Or if he feels the air is moving inside, it is a hallucination. Again, it's a serious mental illness. You have to understand the idiom of the tribal to know what is normal and what is abnormal. And again, the question of matching the cultures of psychiatrist and the patient. There are two views in this. The ethic view is an outsider's view. The emic view is an insider's view. Means say, suppose I have to go to tribal place, I'm an outsider. I don't know their mores and living customs, culture, and everything. I look at it very objectively. Yeah, it's a temperature, pulse, and all. When it comes to the mind, there are no measurements as such. You have to assess. And for that, you have to know their belief system, their culture, their language, their idiom, everything. That is not possible in ethic view 100%. But emic view, yes, they understand the depth and the meaning of the symptom. But in that bargain, they may lose a little bit of objectivity. So we have to strike a balance. And a modified mental status, standard mental status exam that want to do a psychiatrist that may not be applicable to them. And we have to have, as I said, validated instrument suitable to that particular company, particular tribal. Oh, I'm stuck here. Yeah, yeah. This was a picture taken in Auckland, New Zealand when I was there. This is a Maori gentleman, Nia. His name is Nia. In New Zealand, there's a large, significant tribal population, Maoris. They are originally inhabitants of New Zealand. They have integrated their mental health program with the local belief systems. And he gives his own assessment, and the doctor gives his own, and a coordinated and homogeneous holistic interpretation is given to mental health, and it is acceptable to the population, Maori population. That is what I think we need. A word about Gandhian thoughts on health of mind. Gandhi took, I think, the tribal people as a part of the village, part of the rural population, but he admired their ability and their usual habit of living independent existence with nature. As far as the mental health is concerned, Gandhi's emphasis on diet. In fact, when I took over the president, my presidential lecture was on diet in mental diseases. Emphasized the diet, sanitation, and exercise, which are relevant to any health condition, which are always relevant. Sedentary habits and poor diet are behind the surging NCD, that is NCD, non-communicable diseases like hypertension, diabetes, heart disease. They are not infectious diseases. Gandhi's emphasis on mobilizing support of relatives and help in local income generating locally in the village situation and work gives the recovering individual hope, respect, financial independence, and opportunity to be a productive individual of the group. And that is a very positive help a person to reintegrate himself into the society. Spirituality is the dimension of health. This is health is defined as complete physical, mental, psychological, and spiritual well-being. So spirituality is a part of our health. Gandhian emphasis on spirituality contributes to the holistic recovery process and allows the individual to reintegrate back into the society. But then it is all a process, doesn't happen overnight. As I said, in 2017, we started the tribal specialty section. 2021, we made little progress. What we are doing is now we have selected a district in Odisha and we have taken four tribal languages, one standard instrument by which the mental health is measured. We are translating into tribal. We are uh, we will validate it and then we put it across to the tribal people to assess their mental status and how they are functioning and all sort of things. So this takes time. We are presently focused on Mini, that is a instrument, psychological instrument. So the plan is to train ASHA workers to administer the instrument and offer essential care at an identified tribal district. That is in Odisha, Sundargarh. Simultaneously study pattern of psychopathology, what are the abnormal things one notices when somebody falls mentally a tribal person. Their idiom, how do they express it in their own local way? Traditional ways of healing, how they manage it. You see, all psychological people do not come straight to the psychiatrist. They go to the first village priest, then some gunya, some oja, some doctor, some friend, some relative. All sort of barriers are there before they come to the psychiatrist. What are the barriers there? We don't know. So we need to know. That's what the point is. Ways of integration of care. Well, bullock cart travel is a slow process still, um, but you reach home. For those people who travel in bullock cart, I traveled. Actually, bullock cart went over my head. You go to a place and you have to drive the bullocks to that place. On the return, you don't have to do anything. You just sleep on the bullock cart, they take you home. So we reach home, we reach our goal, provided we stay fast to work at it. So that's all there to it about the travel mental health. I hope I did not bore all of you, but it is of relevance to us. A large number of our population probably is not getting the care which they are supposed to get as individuals, as citizens of this great country. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir. Kindly end the slideshow.
And this slide, so I press it. I, I know what to do. What I have to do to end it?
Yeah,
Now
fine.
it's
So,
so,
Th-
so uh, Dr. MSVK Raju, I believe you are brigadier
I
in
was,
our
I retired long back.
you retired long back, and you are heading the panel of the SARC doctors on psychiatry. So it's good to hear you.
Thank
But
you.
I just want to add something what you have said that National Human Rights Commission initiated. They started a study on the mental health of the tribals, and in that
Yeah?
mental health of the tribals. That's the
Uh-huh.
pan Indian report. You might have come across that.
Uh,
And
mhm.
the Society for Empowerment has also done two studies on COVID-19 and its impact on the tribals of Odisha, tribals of Jharkhand, and tribals of Chhattisgarh. So these reports, I think you might have seen, or I will send you the copy of these reports
I'll be
that will
grateful
add
about it.
that,
Yeah.
that will add to your knowledge. The
Thank
second
you.
thing which I just wanted to share with you is that there are some tribes who are leading the total Gandhian way of life. So
Ah,
we call them as the Gandhian tribe, living Gandhian
okay.
human being, because there is a tribe called Tana Bhagat in Jharkhand who are
Ah,
leading the Gandhian way of life.
good.
100%. They start their day with the Gandhian Vajan and they end their day by flagging off the flag of the Gandhi, that Charkha. and then they, with the prayers of the Gandhi, they eat whatsoever they grow. So they are the mental health, the mental health of those. If you compare the Tana Bhagat with the non-Tana Bhagat tribe, then you will find that the mental health of the Tana Bhagats, the Gandhian tribe, is much better than the others one. This is largely because they are following the path of the Gandhi. They are living the life as Gandhi lived. Means they eat whatsoever they grow, and they are surrounded by the Naxalites people. There's so many law and order problem is there, but they do not care for them. They will come, those people, they come and beat them, but they do not agree to take, say, arms with them. So they are still le- leading the life of the Gandhi. So is there is a tribe, say a similar
Uh,
tribe is in Chhattisgarh also. So these tribes, when we talk of the mental health of the tribals, I think that these needs to be incorporated because
uh,
they are the examples. Even
what
otherwise,
information
the
here I may interrupt you, sorry,
yes,
Professor
yes,
Narayan, is that they take mental illness as one big black monolith, like it's not that. There are so many diseases of the mind, but generally in
correct,
people's mind, mental illness is serious mental illness, or raving mad, as they say, unfortunately. That's so. There's so many minor illnesses. Actually, most of the diseases of the mind are minor, common mental illnesses. And most of the studies which I have come across do not have a comprehensive assessment of the illness load in the tribal people. Like we had a national mental survey, as I said, that was excluding dementia, they have assessed it more or less. But that did not happen in tribal so far. But your suggestion, I will contact you, in touch with you. I'll get things from you, and that will add to the information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Now,
any other observation? Any other observations by anyone? Any participants want to say something? Dr. Shivri Pereira, if you do have some observation on what Dr. Raju has said.
Yes, sir, thank you. I have just a brief comment to make. I mean, here in Sri Lanka also we have, well, I suppose not as widespread as in India, but
We
we
have the
have,
Vadas there.
that's right, sir. So we have the Veda community, which, like you said, they have their own sort of belief systems and in terms of mental and physical health, which we are finding hard to penetrate, but they are quite happy and they're quite content, although we have not studied in an extent that you have about the mental health aspects of our tribal people, but certainly very good insight for us to carry on from our point of view here in Sri Lanka, sir.
Dr. Sairi, for information of colleagues, is a very busy and very active psychiatrist. She organized a huge conference of the SARC countries in Colombo, and she is highly sensitive to the issues which matters the common people. Thank you, Sairi, for your comment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Dr. Raju. You have made a very fruitful contribution in the field of mental health of the tribals.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you.
Ashish Neeraj,
yes, sir. Sir, now I will like to invite Dr. Sayuri Pereira. She is from Sri Lanka and currently she is employed as a senior lecturer of psychiatry at the Faculty of Medicine, University of Paradena, and she has graduated from University of Paradena, MD from Colombo University, and she has also studied in University of Oxford. So I request Dr. Savidi Pereira for her deliveries.
Okay, try and get the presentation. Is it clear? Can you see it?
No, you need to select it.
Yeah. And okay. So, share. Mm. Can you see now? Is it possible to see?
Yeah.
Can you see my presentation?
Your screen is visible. Can
Can you see it now?
yeah, yeah, fine.
Okay. So, is it okay now, Ashish?
Yeah, yeah, fine.
Let's see. Okay, if there's any problem, please stop me. First and foremost, a lovely evening to you from Sri Lanka. And I must thank Professor Narayan sir for giving me this opportunity and to speak amongst so many dignitaries at this very valid and beautifully organized webinar. So I am from the University of Peradeniya. I work as a senior lecturer in psychiatry as well as a consultant psychiatrist. And it's my pleasure to speak to you a little bit, a few minutes about Buddhism and psychiatry. Now, Siddhartha Gautama was born to a king and a queen in Lumbini in the Shakya Republic. And he enjoyed his princehood for close upon 2 decades, beyond 2 decades in life before he finally gained enlightenment as the Buddha. And see, the Buddha is considered to be a great healer in many aspects of his Buddhist doctrine. There are references to the healing of the unwell, of the ill. And he described 2 kinds of illness. So illness was described as rogo. He described the kaiko rogo, which is physical illness, and the chetasiko rogo, which is a mental illness. Now, 2,500 years later, this still holds true, and we as Western practitioners still speak of physical illnesses and mental illnesses. And he described this way back in the 6th century BC. Now, simply because of his reference to illnesses, which he clustered as physical and mental illnesses, he is often referred to as Bissako, the physician, and Salakato, the psychotherapist. We know that the scriptures describe of his dedication to heal the unwell and also enlighten people in the various aspects of psychotherapy, which we will discuss as the presentation goes on. Now, the Buddha attributed the mental illness as klesha or mental defilements. What this means is a defilement is something that removes the purity of your mentality. So the klesha make your mentality impure. And what the Buddha stated was that these impurities or this klesha arrive from the 3 poisons, raga, dvesha, and moha. It is depicted in many pictorial forms in these scriptures. A rooster, the snake, and the pig, which symbolize greed, hatred, and delusion. So Buddha said that these are the things which take away the purity of our mental health. So these are the 3 poisons. Now the Buddha was by far known as was a very he's a very ethical teacher, and he was a reformer. So he was a reformer, and he focused very much on the pragmatic and the practical side of life. And as you know, that in Buddhism, there is a huge focus on sorrow or dukkha, right? And Buddhists believe that dukkha or sorrow is the main culprit for all the suffering that we have to face in our lives. And Buddha always tried to enlighten persons on the impact of this sorrow. So he questioned sorrow, the origin of sorrow, how does sorrow end, and what is the pathway leading to the cessation of this sorrow. So, sorrow, how does it originate? How do we stop sorrow? And what is the pathway leading to the stopping or the cessation of sorrow? Now, the answer to these four beautiful questions lies in what we call the Four Noble Truths. Right? Now, the Four Noble Truths, like I mentioned, is the truth of suffering, the existence of suffering, the cause of suffering, the pathway to the end of the truth to the end, so that the suffering, there is an end to suffering, and the pathway leading to the end of suffering. So this is the Four Noble Truths. And we as Western practitioners of psychiatry, those who have read into the depths of Buddhist teaching, will realize that in fact, this is somewhat the basis that we use in modern psychiatry to understand and manage mental health conditions. Now, when we work with patients, what we try to understand is the stressor. There is a stressor. Then we look at symptoms arising due to this stressor, anxiety or depression, whatever it is. Mostly we see anxiety and depression. And realization that these disorders can be treated. And managing these conditions, of course, as modern day psychiatrists, we use a combination of pharmacotherapy as well as psychotherapy in treating these conditions. Now, you see, I wouldn't say an exact match, but it is beautiful to learn that this kind of breakdown of sorrow or stressor in modern day life has been described very similar to this 2500 years by the great Buddha. Now, the Buddha was a very unique psychotherapist, and like I said, the earliest Buddhist writings, as you all may be knowing, is contained in the Tripitaka. Tripitaka contains all the Buddhist writings and the teachings that the Buddha brought forward. And in the first part, the Sutta Pitaka, it contains a series, not one, but a series of discourses attributed to the Buddha containing much of the psychological materials of the things that I briefly mentioned about, and more, in great detail within this chapter in the Tripitaka. So, many years later, towards the 90s, it was only during maybe the 1900s that clinicians, psychiatrists, psychologists looked into assessing Buddhism in terms of the Western psychology field. So people like a variety of renowned teachers like Carl Jung and Erich Fromm, to just name a few, they attempted to bridge and integrate psychology, psychiatry, and Buddhism. And since then, they have shown there have many writings locally as well as globally. I've just put forward two of the somewhat most read books on Buddhism and psychotherapy, and they showed that Buddhism and the Western psychology and psychiatry overlap in theory as well as in practice. And today we find that many modern psychotherapy systems are derived from this Buddhist teaching or the Buddhist psychotherapy, because you know that psychotherapy forms an integral and very important part of managing psychiatric conditions, even as Western practitioners of psychiatry. So it was only in the 1900s that this realization came about and Buddhist psychotherapy practices were incorporated into Western psychiatry methods. Right. Now, if you look at Buddhism, and now we are focusing today on the aspect of Buddhism that focuses on psychology and psychiatry. Now, if you look at mental health illnesses in general, right? Mental health conditions or mental health disorders are psychological or behavioral patterns that are associated with distress that occur in an individual, and it is not part of the normal development of culture. So abnormal patterns of behavior that are not part of the normal culture is a very sort of basic understanding of what a psychiatric illness is. And when we talk in depth about psychiatry, we find we have stumbled across that we also use these particular terms when we describe the particular features of a mental illness and its management. We refer to aspects of human psychology. There are emotional components, there are cognitive components, there are behavioral components incorporated in Western day psychiatric practice. And when you look back at the scriptures of the Buddha, he himself has also spoken about how psychology, emotion, cognition, and behavior, motivation, and practices. And Buddha has gone into detailed description about how these things collaborate together in the creation and maintenance, and how these collaborate together to form therapeutic practices. So this has been going on for many centuries, and has been described by the Buddha very beautifully. Now, you know that the human mind, I will speak to you about a little bit about this. Now, when you talk about Buddhist psychology, the therapeutic goals are two broad goals. So what he said is the healthy and virtuous life of a household. See, Buddha was a very practical teacher, a very practical healer. And the first aspect of his goal was not to achieve enlightenment or anything like that. Very simple, pragmatic, healthy, and virtuous life of the householder himself, which he termed harmonious living or samacharya. And then, of course, the ultimate goal. Once you have had a healthy and virtuous life as a layman, of course, the ultimate goal would be nirvana, the total cessation of suffering. Now, these are the two main therapeutic goals that the Buddhist psychology aspect also has been promoting and has been going on for many years. Right. Now, the human mind has a very, very important and special place in Buddhist philosophy. And actually, no other religion has gone into depth to analyze the human mind as much as Buddhism has. Which is why Buddhism is in fact called a doctrine or a pathway of educating people. So, which is with a special focus on the mind. And the Buddhist philosophy talks about the human mind, like I mentioned, and its pathological and non-pathological states, and that forms part of the psychotherapy also. So the Buddhist psychotherapy, now you will see that this has very much lot of similes between what we practice today. So communication between the therapist and the patient, development of body awareness, feeling awareness, probing into the consciousness, right? Analysis of certain stressors, and then in the long term, rehabilitation and socialization. This is also part of the psychotherapy based on what the Buddha has said. Now, you will see that even today, we talk about establishing a rapport between the therapist and the patient, making the patient aware of physical or mental health ailments, distresses, and then, of course, you probe into the problems and the consciousness that these patients have, of their issues and problems that they are undergoing, right? And we analyze various aspects of their lives, and then we, of course, speak very much about rehabilitation and social integration of patients back into society. And like I have mentioned in my previous slides, again, this has been very beautifully described in Buddhist psychotherapy many, many years ago. So, now, how are these messages passed on to the lay public, particularly in relation to mental health? Now, 2,500 years ago and beyond that, there were no psychiatrists, right? But then people also at that time, they had the same problems that we are facing today in society. There is depression, there is anxiety, marital problems, death, grief, personality disorders, all of these existed even back then. So, what the Buddha wanted to do was he recognized the existence of these things, and that is why there is so much description about what we spoke about, right? About the mental defilements, about the noble truth, the methodology of Buddhist psychotherapy, the 6 steps, what we do with the client, what we do with the patient. But then, how was he? This is all, of course, described in the Tripitaka, very deep language. But how is this message passed to lay people who are suffering with all these mental health problems that you and I have now classified under DSM and ICD-10 and various diagnostic criteria? So, for this, um, I spoke to you that the mind is the all problems, all suffering is preceded by the mind. And what we think, we become. So the mind is in the forefront of all things that we experience as lay people in the community. And this is the word of the Buddha. So, how did he give across this message of healing the mind, psychotherapy? How did he explain it to the simple people in society? Now, he did that by what we call, I think you have heard of these things, the Jataka stories. So, Jataka stories highlight not only psychiatric illnesses, though I am going to focus more on the psychiatric aspects of the Jataka stories. But he spoke about the power of the mind and the mind supremacy in dealing with various abnormal behaviors, psychiatric illnesses, how he treated them, the therapeutic approaches he used, and made the person realize his own problem and how to come out of it. Now, as children, we used to love listening to the psychiatric aspects of Jataka stories. So, Jataka means birth. Jataka is birth, and these stories, there are 550 Jataka stories of Buddha's previous lives on the pathway to become the enlightened one. The various lives that he led, and even at that time, he had this special healing property, this benevolence to other people. And these are beautifully highlighted in Jataka stories so as to make people understand their own problems and feel that they are not alone in facing these problems. And Buddha himself had to face these problems many, many years ago. So I will just highlight a few. You will realize how beautiful these stories are. Uh, there are various types of mental disorders and how it affected the individual. And for centuries, it was like a therapy for people to listen to these stories and how the Buddha dealt with he was very compassionate towards these people who were mentally ill. And very interestingly, Buddha never showed any persecution of psychiatric patients. There was no stigma against psychiatric patients, which is, I think, a wonderful virtue that he had. Whereas now we are struggling, where psychiatric patients are persecuted and isolated and stigmatized. Way back then, 2,500 years ago, there was no such stigmatization or persecution of psychiatric patients. Right? So I'll just run through a few just to make the talk a little bit interesting for you. Now, I think Professor Raju, sir, you will also agree with me now. The DSM criteria or the DSM or the diagnostic criteria. Um, or the ICD, International Classification of Diseases, we have classified mental health illnesses into various subcategories. And I will just run through 5 or 6 to show how even back then these subcategories are beautifully highlighted in the practical sense. Now, hysteria, right? Hysteria, of course, described in detail by many, many people. Hippocrates was the first to describe, and Freud went to a lot of detail about hysteria. Now, in hysteria, the modern term we use is dissociative disorders, where there are psychological ailments due to various coming out as bodily symptoms. So, psychological ailments coming out as bodily symptoms. And these symptoms can't be traced back to any physical cause. Basically, that is what a hysteria or a dissociative disorder is. Now, way back then, the Jataka stories give various examples of this neurotic or this dissociative illnesses in various subjects in the stories of the Jataka Katha. Now, there's this prince Asanaga. He suffered from gynecophobia. That means he had a fear of women. He feared women, and he never had a chance to meet with women. So his desire for women was always suppressed within him. And when he ultimately met a woman, these suppressed desires emerged like a volcano erupting from a mountain. He became, and this, so the psychological distress manifested as a physical form of violence. And then it goes into detail how the Buddha, um, how he intervened and how he came out of it. But that the point I want to show to you is how this has been described many ages ago. You have heard of the Oedipal conflict, right? Of course, detailed beautifully by Sigmund Freud. Unconscious feelings and desires to possess the parent of the opposite sex and eliminate the parent of the same sex. And the Tayo Dharma Jataka describes this beautifully of the king, monkey king's son, who is so close to the queen monkey and wants the father eliminated. And he grows up hidden in the jungle, wanting to kill the father. Mother secretly feeds him and he grows up to be this big prince monkey, and he challenges the father and ultimately kills him, right? Then we also speak about sexual jealousy, which is a very prevalent condition in our modern psychiatry. Now, this is also, that jealousy is a very universal feeling, and sexual jealousy is normal until it is acted upon. And there's violence and harm and behaviors and actions which become irrational and harm other people. And the Parvakuta Jataka beautifully highlights where this king wrongfully imagines that his queen is involved in a relationship with his chief, and how he suffers the anguish and hatred towards this person, right? Then another king who killed his infant son due to sexual jealousy because of the infuriation and the jealousy that he felt seeing the mother and the infant close together. And how he ultimately killed his own son, the infant prince, because of this jealousy. And we see this in day-to-day life currently also. Right? Then, of course, lot of personality disorders. I suppose if you have heard of personality disorders, people with very rigid and unhealthy patterns of behavior and speech, beautifully described in the Krishnavati Jataka, and there are about 3 or 4 Jataka stories where this king showed a lot of emotionlessness and manipulation, no remorse, no empathy, impulsivity, which is almost the carbon copy of the antisocial or the dissocial personality disorders that we deal about. Then the Lapagaru Jataka beautifully describes about a person, an Umatu person, someone with abnormal behavior, divergence from reality, erroneous thinking and decision making, very much in keeping with the schizophrenia picture that we see currently. In depressive disorders, there's a description of a king who was depressed following the death of his queen, and all the symptoms of insomnia, anhedonia, suicidal thoughts described in this king who probably suffered from a from a depressive disorder. Then the Buddha also spoke about how to deal with death. Kisa Gautami was running around the whole village with the dead body of her son and asked the Buddha to bring back the son to life. I will do anything to bring my son back to life. And this highlights how nice the psychotherapy starts here. He says, please bring me a mustard seed from a house where no one in that house has ever lost a family member to death. And if you bring that seed, I will bring your son to life. He knew fully well that she is not going to find a mustard. And finally, Kisa Gautami realized that death is inevitable and that you have to she came to terms with the death of her child. So this is how simple and pragmatic and practical Buddhist psychotherapy is. Then finally, the stories of Patachara. She lost her husband. She lost both her children. One child got drifted away in the river. Parents' house caught fire and the parents died. Husband was stung by a snake and he died while crossing the river. A giant eagle captured her toddler. So she lost everybody in her life and she was running around town without her clothes. She had no self worth, no self respect. And she came to the Buddha who spoke to her and helped her to manage this grief, probably what the grief counseling that we do currently for our patients. So much so that Patachara became a nun. When she entered the Buddhisthood as a nun, and it was a contrast to her pre-existing state. Then PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, again describes a monk who had almost all the signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. So what I wanted to highlight to you again was that criteria that we use and we use to subcategorize, classify patients and therefore manage them has already been described. So has many other aspects of psychiatry. The Buddha's insight into mental illness, which is well documented in sacred scriptures, his explanation of the arising of the mental defilements or the klesha, probably the predisposing factors that we speak of in psychiatry currently. We speak of predisposing factors. How we use similar concepts as the Four Noble Truths to understand illness manifestation, and how Buddhist psychotherapy methods are very similar to what we practice today, and how the simple, pragmatic way he explained concepts to lay people in the form of Jataka stories. This is a topic that I can speak of all day if I have the time. But I have just highlighted it into a very brief presentation so as to not make it very boring for you. Once again, I thank you, Sir, Professor Narayan, Sir, uh, for this wonderful opportunity. And I look forward to many collaborative work in the future, if you permit me, Sir, which I will be glad to be a part of. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sue Pereira. You have made a good presentation, and this is a very, very good clinical uh, aspect of the Buddhism that you have talked of. I have also worked on Buddhism and Buddha. I am working on that also even today, and I belong to that place that is known as Gaya and Bodh Gaya. So I am visiting Bodh Gaya since 1962, and I have written about 6 books on Buddhism. The first book is Bodh Gaya and Buddha. The second book is Buddhism and World Peace. The latest one is the Strategies for World Peace and Buddhism. So Buddhism is a very acceptable and very applicable method of solving the problems globally. So it's very popular approach of Buddha. And even today, we find that in many of the cases, we find that Buddhism is the solution for the global peace. And Gandhiji was very much influenced by Buddhism. Even in his experiment with truth, we find that how he was the human value, giving importance to each individual is that. And Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi, they experimented in Champaran uh, how to uh, keep the people, tribal people, the Tharus, are very much aware of the Buddha's preaching and the Gandhi, because Buddha is about only 60 to 80 kilometers away from Champaran. So both were very close, and the, there are several places in Champaran in which where Buddha stayed in the night, and Gandhi also went to those places. Knowingly, Gandhi went there to see how Buddha on those days could come and influence the people to follow Buddhism, to become his follower. So that is one thing. The other thing is, if you see the present Bodh Gaya, the population living in and around Bodh Gaya, they need some Buddhist interventions, uh, as you suggested, the dukkha, the nirvana, and finally the what you call the final truth, which Buddha realized. So that is, but there are so many monasteries. Even Sri Lanka monastery is also there in Bodh Gaya. But
That's
people
right.
come and they perform the rituals at the Mahabodhi temple, and then they go back, because there is a international airport also in Bodh Gaya. So they come, they will just worship, and then they will return to
Visit
that.
the things,
But
that's right.
but I think that I want to just make a request to you that if you have time and if you have some interest, then you visit that Bodh Gaya where Buddha spent and become and attained Buddhahood, the Bodhisattva. So that will your interaction with the local population may be able to remove many of the feelings, many which are not correct about the Buddha and the Buddhism. And they are the mental fallacy which they are having. Probably your interaction or your short stay maybe may remove that. So if you want to do that, then Society for Empowerment is there with you to extend support in your that study or in your that visit. So that you can later on we can do it. And since this is your first interaction with the Society for Empowerment, I would like to invite you in future also. And if you want to know anything more, that is there. And our patron, Dr. A.K. Pandey, is also there. He has also interest in many of the things, uh, these things. So we are there to support you if you visit Bodh Gaya to further strengthen your hypothesis, your theory, your ideas, and all that. So these were some of my opinion which I just wanted to share with you. Now, Neeraj ji or
Yes,
लोग
sir.
तो भी नहीं
Thank you. Actually, I have been to Bodh Gaya as a teenager. I had no
हाँ,
insight into the psychiatric illnesses or any of its manifestations back then. But thank you, sir. I would very much love to take that up. Um, See, application of it in a practical sense, dispelling the fallacies associated, and probably adding some or improving the quality of life of some of the suffering that these people must be going through, Professor Nara. And I will contact you, sir, and Dr. Pandey as well, with how we can move forward with that venture, sir. Thank you so much.
thank
Sir,
you.
sir, I just thank you, Dr. Sayuri. Sir, I just talked to Dr. Gandhi. He
हाँ,
is having some problem in connection. He is trying. In between, I would like to invite our patron and senior IAS officer, Dr. A.K. Pandey, sir, for his deliberation.
May I ask one question?
Yes, yes, please, please.
That Sairi, this is regarding what you said,
Yes.
Samacharya. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Samacharya is
Yes.
about the householders' responsibility and duties. I think that's equivalent to Grostha in the Hindu uh, dharmas. But Buddha himself left his wife, no, and child, and went into seeking uh, this thing. So I mean, how it can one can reconcile it? I mean, I don't know much of Buddhism. I'm asking.
Yes, sir. Well, Buddhism also, sir, is a, how do I say, a doctrine that focuses a lot on self-sacrifice. It speaks a lot of self-sacrifice. So there is in these famous Jataka stories
Self-sacrifice.
also, there is sacrifice in terms of suicide also, sacrificing your own life. And there is another Jataka story called the Vesantara Jataka, where he sacrificed his wife and his children. He gave to a beggar because it would make the beggar happy. So self-sacrifice is very much described in Buddhist literature. And I agree that he himself left his wife and the son, but then the wife and the son also later joined Buddhisthood, sir, and followed his
When it
teaching.
came back.
That's right. That's right.
I would like to welcome Dr. Arun Gandhi ji. He is with us. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Sorry,
Welcome
I'm
to
late.
Doctor. No, no, it's okay because we have scheduled the program. Knowingly, we have put it to 9 because we were knowing that it will be at least 8:30, as you have mentioned earlier. So, welcome you to again
Thank you all.
to
Thank you.
we had a I would just like to brief you that we started Dr. Jyoti Vindal. She is a vice chancellor of Medical University, Arvindo Medical University in Indore, India. She talked about the current problem which the doctors are facing and how to keep people well. That then Dr. Brigadier M.S.V.K. Raju talked about the tribals and their mental health. Then this Dr. Sharur Peria from Sri Lanka, she talked about Buddhism and peace and how we can this Buddhism can be part of the and in the beginning there a representative representing the district magistrate of Motihari, she came to and welcomed us and she talked about the Gandhi and the current scenario in Motihari. So she said that she is looking forward to see us physically in Motihari. So I was just waiting for you that if when the situation will uh, become normal, then there is a we have an offer invitation from the administration of Motihari to visit Motihari and to see the places of Gandhiji. So that now you are there. So uh, Dr. A.K. Pandey was to make some comments. You have to make some comments.
Uh, if you permit, I take a little 2, 3, or 5 minutes to make
Uh,
some comments on this before Dr. Gandhi starts his deliberation. Uh, First, actually, I am thankful to Dr. Pereira because this is my first encounter with somebody who has deep study in Buddhism. And really, I have heard those things of Jatak and the stories. But in one string, I have heard first time, and really I feel I am enlightened. It is axiomatic truth actually that though civilization goes on for thousands of years, the basic problems of men don't change very much. We have to face same psychological, physical problems in thousands of years. For example, think of Ashok. Ashok was a great emperor, but what we praise him for? He has planted trees, he has made roads, he has made public happy by digging wells and tanks, and improved students' education, all these things. After a few thousand years, a long time, Akbar came. Akbar is also praised for same similar things. He has made roads, he has made tanks, he has made wells, and improved education. And after so many years, when I study 20-point program of uh, our government, it has also same formula. It is because basic human needs continue to be same. So similarly, I feel that though Buddha and Gandhi are thousands of years apart, but they have very simple similarity of ahimsa, peaceful coexistence, and consolation, an attitude towards poor people, and all those things. So, how, what made Buddha Buddha, and what made Gandhi Gandhi? I have already said they are much above average persons of the world which we meet around. But see the reaction to a situation which is not average. Buddha saw the sufferings in the streets, dead man, sick man, and old man. And his reaction was think about a method how to get rid of these griefs. And he spent his life. And ultimately he found some pearls, some jewels. He distributed people and made a change into the society. That was a big change. Similarly, Gandhi was thrown out of railway. He was happily. Similarity in Gandhi and Buddha is they were well off. They were comfortable in life. But one incident with Gandhi that he was thrown out of the first class compartment made him think. Many people have been thrown out of the train till that time. But his reaction was to think deeply, deeply, and so deeply as to remove that problem from the base. So that is the position even today. But suddenly, what has happened? We have come to a situation of COVID, and COVID has made a fundamental change in our thinking because whole society, whole economy works on economy of size. if if you cook for two persons and you cook for 100%, then cost per person of cooking food will be less in 100%. But as COVID has come, you can't gather, you can't sit together, you can't meet together. Now that is the most important challenge coming to us. Similarly, we share our griefs, we share our pleasures in the family, meet friends, so that gives us a comfortable uh, psychological position when we are normal. And today we are not getting that. Now it is fortunate that we are sitting like this because of technical advances they have come, and perhaps these technical advances will give us a new vision to our current problems, even psychological or medical. Maybe today, someday afterwards, our medical science is not similar, but it is just by remote telemedicine and other things will come. So as on today, even psychological conciliation, abnormal psychology, these things will transform to remote. Just like we are sitting in meeting, maybe these services will change. There is much which can be said. I wanted, yet I think Dr. Gandhi is among us, and it is fortunate because his knowledge and his vision he has directly seen, and we have only read and heard from about Gandhi from other people. So I will spare time. I hope hearing him will be lifetime opportunity for all of us. And with these few words, I stop my uh, deliberation and hope we will be together sometime again. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pandey, sir. Now I will request Honorable Arun Gandhi, sir, for his presidential deliberation.
Thank you very much for giving me this invitation to speak to all of you. Um, I feel a little incompetent to be among all of you experts in the field. I am not an expert in any field. Uh, I don't know much about the medical field except as a layman. And so the COVID situation, while it does worry me because so many people are affected and are you know, suffering all over all over the world. What caused COVID, I don't know. How it came about, I don't know. But in a very general sense, I am sure it has come about because of our lifestyle. In many ways, the things that we do and the way we have been exploiting nature and exploiting people and exploiting resources and exploiting everything for our personal gains, that had some role to play in creating this pandemic. Um, Bapuji had thought about this a long time ago, and also Gautama Buddha thought about it a long time ago, and both of them insisted that the only salvation for humanity is to make a change in our lifestyle. Uh, they both changed their own lifestyle and they asked us to change our lifestyle, but we refused to do that. Gandhiji said once, just a few days before he was assassinated, when a Western journalist asked him, "What do you think is going to be the future of your philosophy and your work after you pass on?" And Gandhiji made a very pathetic statement. He said, "The people will follow me in life, worship me in death, but not make my cause their cause." And that is what is happening today. We followed him in life. Now we worship him in death, but we will not do what he told us to do. I'm sure the same words could have been expressed by Gautama Buddha, by Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, by Jesus. All of these people whom we revere and pray to and worship, all of them had talked about change, but we continue to refuse to change. We are now so wedded in the philosophy of materialism that making money is the most important thing in life. The more we have, the more we want, and we just want, by any means possible, we want to get rich. And that is the ambition of everybody, and we pass on this ambition to our children. When we tell them that they have to be successful in life, they have to get to the top by any means possible. Don't think about anybody else, just think about yourself and get to the top. We are planting the seeds of selfishness in the children. We are planting the seeds of greed in the children. And we are telling them that they have success is material. What kind of car do we drive? What kind of house do we have? How much bank balance we have? That is the most important thing. Nothing else matters. So, in that kind of a life, we are going to have lots of conflicts, and we are going to have conflicts with nature, and because we exploit nature also, and then we have all these pandemics and the illnesses that have destroyed our lifestyle. We talk about violence, and we are concerned about violence in society and everywhere else, but we really don't know the extent of violence. We haven't paid much attention to that because we are so focused on physical violence. I remember when I was living with Bapuji as a 12-year-old boy, and I was going to school, and one day coming back from school, I had a little pencil. It was about 3 inches long. And I thought I deserved a better pencil. This is too small for me to use. And without a second thought, I just threw the pencil away because I was so sure that Bapuji would give me a new pencil when I asked him for one. But that evening, when I met Bapuji and asked him for a new pencil, instead of giving me a new pencil, he subjected me to a lot of questions. He wanted to know how the pencil became small and where did I throw it away and why did I throw it away, and on and on. And I couldn't understand why he was making such a fuss over a little pencil until he told me to go out and look for it. And I said, "You must be joking." I said, "You don't expect me to look for a little pencil in the dark?" He said, "Yes, I do. Here is the flashlight. Go out and look for the pencil and bring it to me." And I think I spent about 2 hours searching for that pencil. And when I finally found it and brought it to him, he said, "Now I want you to sit here and learn two very important lessons. The first lesson is that even in the making of a simple thing like a pencil, we use a lot of the world's natural resources. And when we throw them away, we are throwing away the world's natural resources. And that is violence against nature. And the second lesson is that because in an affluent society we can afford to buy all these things in bulk, we overconsume the resources of the world. And because we overconsume them, we are depriving people elsewhere of these resources, and they have to live in poverty, and that is violence against humanity. And that was the first time I realized that all of these little things that we do every day, consciously and unconsciously, things that we waste and we destroy and throw away because we have so much of it, that all of that is violence. And then to make me understand this lesson thoroughly, he made me draw a genealogical tree of violence. Just as we make a family tree, with violence as the grandparent, and physical violence and passive violence as the two branches. And every day before I went to bed, I had to analyze and examine everything that I had done during the day or experienced or read about or whatever it was. All of those things had to be analyzed and put in their appropriate places on that tree. Now, physical violence is what we know and we talk about, and because it's there and you see the blood and gore and it hits you in the face all the time. It's all the kinds of violence where physical force is used. All the murders and killings and beatings and wars and fightings and all of these things, that's physical violence. But passive violence is something that we don't know about, and we have not even talked about it. And that is all the things that we do to one another, directly or indirectly, where we hurt people without using any physical force. The discrimination, looking down on people, um, all the waste and resources and all the hundreds of things that we do every day, consciously and unconsciously. That is passive violence. And the way I had to determine this was to ask myself the question, if somebody were to do this to me, would I be hurt by it or would I be helped by it? And if I came to the conclusion that it would help me or hurt me, then that would be passive violence. So when I started doing this introspection to find out how much violence I was committing, I was amazed that within a few months, I was able to fill up a whole wall in my room with acts of passive violence. And that is when Bapuji explained to me the connection between the two. He said, we commit passive violence all the time, every day, consciously and unconsciously. And that generates anger in the victim, and the victim then resorts to physical violence to get justice. So it is passive violence that fuels the fire of physical violence. So logically, if we want to put out that fire of physical violence, we have to cut off the fuel supply. And since the fuel supply comes from each one of us, we have to be the change we wish to see in the world. If we don't change our attitudes, if we don't start building better relationships with people, then we are never going to bring peace in this world. So when we talk about ahimsa or when we talk about violence, we have to go into the depths of it, not just the superficial understanding of that philosophy. Gautama Buddha talked about ahimsa, Mahavir talked about ahimsa, but we've just skimmed the top of the meaning of the word. We haven't gone into the depth of it. Because if we go into the depth of it, then we have to make a change in our attitudes and our life and our lifestyle. And it's only when we do that that we will really be truly Buddhist or truly Jain or true believers in the religion. Until then, we are just paying lip service to religion, to God. We go and pray 10 times a day, and we think that that is enough and that is going to get our salvation. But praying alone without putting that into action is not going to be worth anything at all. If that prayer doesn't incorporate in our lives, it doesn't show in our attitudes and in our behaviors towards each other, then all that prayer is meaningless. So we have to look at all of these things that we have ignored for so many centuries and see how best we can change that and change our own attitudes towards life itself. It's only then that we will be able to create a better world and a better place to live in. And maybe we would be able to avoid the pandemics in the future if we have a better and a healthier lifestyle. So all of these things are incorporated in the philosophy of ahimsa, and we have to look at it and make the different changes that are required. So with these few words and my sincere gratitude to all the medical doctors who are performing real miracles in their fields in India and every other country where the pandemic has been raging all over. And sympathies for those who have lost their lives. It's very sad that this had to happen and has caused so much distress all over the world. But it's a wake-up call. It's telling us that we need to get up and start thinking about our way of life and our attitudes to avoid this kind of thing in the future. And so, again, to all of you medical doctors, thank you very much for what you are doing.
Thank you very much, sir, for your kind words and your deliberation. Now, before the concluding remarks of our president, I set the floor open for 2-3 minutes. If anyone has any questions from Dr. Gandhi, they can ask. Dr. Sayuri, do you have any question?
Not really a question, but more of a comment. So it's a pleasure to meet you, although it is on a virtual platform. And I feel absolutely honored to have been here in your presence. And just coming back to something that you mentioned, sir, you told us that we are encouraging, perhaps indirectly, our children these habits of greed and selfishness, and to forge ahead in their race for monetary gains and monetary benefits, which we have placed at a higher standing above perhaps other virtues that we need to inculcate in our children. And in psychiatry, and before that, many years ago, the Lord Buddha also has mentioned about the role of hatred and greed and selfishness in inculcating and maintaining many defilements, particularly in mental health. And it was very refreshing, sir, that you spoke of this, the very same thing, during your address.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jyoti Bindal, ma'am, do you have any comments or questions?
It's been a great honor and pleasure to share the platform with Mr. Gandhi, and I feel very much privileged, sir, to be here. And yes, I am one of the frontline doctors who have been working in this COVID since 23rd March 2020. So it's been more than a year. And yes, the situation is very grim, sir. I do hope India will be able to come out of it. But I have a very, very sincere belief that we have yet to see the second wave peak. And we do need our infrastructures and our various equipments, oxygen line that's severely lacking in our system. So your blessings are very much needed. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Raju,
It is a good fortune, sir, to be on the same stage, though it's a web platform, to be with you. Uh, I just said one simple, I thought I'd ask question. What the Mahatma would have done now if you were alive?
He would have gone, like he always did, he would have gone into the country and spoken to people to bring about a change. He would have started nursing people who are sick. And, even when there was what was that, plague during his lifetime, he went straight away and started nursing. He learnt about it, learnt about the medical ways of nursing people, and started nursing and taking care of them. And so he would have been very active in trying to put an end to this COVID thing.
Just thank you, sir, for that. I think you would have done that, what you exactly said. Just being an army man, I thought Mahatma Gandhi's photograph is there wearing a uniform. He was in the army in South Africa. Where was? In the Armed Forces Medical College. He's there. We are very proud to keep, every medical unit keeps Gandhi's picture in uniform. And secondly, Gandhi was given an honorary rank of a colonel by the Indian population. Both Kasturba and Gandhi worked in UK, where they were wounded of the First World War in UK when they were there.
thank you, sir. Now I will request Professor S. Nayan, who is the president of our society, for give his concluding remarks.
Thank you, Neeraj. Neerajji, thank you. I am very much thankful to Dr. Arun Gandhi ji, who, whenever we request, he agrees to give us uh, some good words to do some good to society. And I hope that in future also we will get uh, cooperation and his blessings for society. His words inspire us that how the people have become selfish. So at least we adopt 2 families or 5 families and make them free from greed and allow them to live like Mahatma or like Buddha, then it will be a great contribution to the society. Because now the society, he has, you have very rightly said that we have, we are responsible for this COVID-19 because the lifestyle has been changed so much that neither we are Indian nor European, neither we think of the Bhagavad Gita nor we think of the Jesus. So there is a mismatch. We do not have a single line thinking as Mahatma Ji had, and the commitment for the society or commitment for the world that we lost. It's nowhere in our syllabus. Nowhere it is being taught that yes, you should be a serious and sincere citizen and a sincere father or a mother or a daughter. That is absent. So even you see, we started one course, Gandhi and Happiness, but very little people, very few people are coming forward for that course. Means people have no concern for the happiness and no concern for how the Gandhian way of life will lead to happiness. They don't want to learn it because they don't have time. They want only, very rightly said, that they are just running after how to become uh, Lakhpati, then Crorepati, then multi Crorepati, like that, and how our children will get degree from the Cambridge, the Oxford, not from that what the Gurukul system is, what uh, the ancient Indian system is. We talk of Buddha, But how many of us or how many of you we find people even in Bodh Gaya, there are monasteries, several monasteries. There is a Mahabodhi society. But instead of have following Buddha or instead of following Gandhi, uh, we find very not even a 1%. And you see, I am doing research for last 50 years, and most of the time each year I visit once or twice Bodh Gaya, but I don't find a sincere person dedicated to Buddhism or dedicated to Gandhism. There is an ashram in northeast India, which was started by Kasturba Gandhi, and that ashram is running. There are about 150 women who have dedicated their life. The in charge of that ashram is she dedicated her life before Gandhiji, and she is still there. She is managing the whole system, but now they are feeling difficulty in running the ashram. So sometimes they fall, sometimes they want guidelines. So we also feel difficulty in running such centers which were once established by Kasturba Gandhiji and which trained people in those remote areas to follow the life of the Gandhian way of life. There is a tribe which I mentioned earlier also, the Tana Bhagat. They are leading the life of 100% Gandhian, but their development is very, very far away. My friend Dr. A.K. Pandey, he was a chief secretary of Jharkhand, but he could not also help. Really, he wanted to help, but the system is as such that if you want to help, your thoughts will be there, but the real action plan does not take place. So that is once again uh, we are thinking how to realize all those things with your guidance, with your support. That is that is all which I want. And once again, I express my thanks that you came to us. Though you have a very busy engagement, so that you agreed to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
So thank you very much to all of you. Now we conclude our webinar. Thanks again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.